The squirrel has flown away, which means it's an oh happy day. Oh happy day, oh happy day. When McNeil walked, when he watched, he washed the Mets' sins away. You're watching Mets Daily. I'm Jake Brown, at Jake Brown Live on all social media. Make sure you smash that thumbs up on this video. Hit that subscribe button. We have hit over 3,000. And to celebrate 3,000 subscribers, we can say goodbye to Jeff McNeil. Thank you for your services. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. The Mets have finally done the inevitable. They've traded away Jeff McNeil, which I've been clamoring for all off season. We knew it was coming. If any of you believed he was going to be here or be the first baseman, mind you, I think you're a lunatic. This was a salary dump. You know, anyone's looking at the return in terms of the player that the Mets get, Yordan Rodriguez, 17-year-old right-hand pitcher from the Athletics, you don't understand what this trade was. This trade was getting rid of an absolute clubhouse cancer, a guy who once led the league in batting average and since then has led the league in temper tantrums. He has been a cold-hearted, brutal person to have in this clubhouse the last 3 years. He has completely regressed. He had thoracic outlet syndrome. He had a procedure on that in the offseason, so we don't even know if he's going to be 100% in 2026. He had 1 year remaining on his contract, which finally made it movable. And in order for it to be moved, shows you how much nobody wanted Jeff McNeil, is the Mets had to give them $5.75 million. So they give the Athletics a third of his contract. He had a $15.75 million contract for 2026. He has the same number for 2027, but it's a club option with a $2 million buyout. So if the A's buy him out, the Mets are paying the buyout. If not, he comes back. Now, I would expect the A's to probably buy him out because they're going to be tired of him bitching, moaning, and crying after every time he grounds out to second base. Now, listen, he's going to the Athletics. He's going to that ballpark in Sacramento where the ball flies, Minor League Park. So maybe Jeff McNeil reinvigorates himself in a pretty good A's lineup that could be a fun offense to watch. But my gut tells me it'll be pretty much the same, like a 250, 260 hitter maybe. You know, a lot of bitching and moaning and complaining. But I'm sure he's happy about it because, listen, he is from California. He's from an area about 5-6 hours away from there. So the weather's going to be good all year. He can golf all year, and he cares more about golf than baseball. So this is perfect for Jeff McNeil. And listen, I know I'm crapping all over Jeff McNeil, but he had some good moments here. Of course, the batting champion thing, though, feels like an eternity ago. I mean, we keep talking about they let go a homegrown batting champion. Look at Jeff McNeil's last 3 seasons and tell me if he did anything productive. Since the batting champion year, 10 homers, 55 RBI, 270, 333 on base. 2024, 12 homers, 44 RBIs, 238 with a 308 on base. 2025, 12 homers, 54 RBIs, 243 with a 335 on base. He was very meh. He's not a starting player every day. And the batting champion year in 2022 was great and all. But once the shift was banned, so was Jeff McNeil. I mean, his career changed. And that was probably the time the Mets should have gave him away. And instead, they gave him that deal. And now new regime, David Stearns is like, how the hell can I get this guy off my roster? And what this marks is the end of the core. You know, this was the final piece. This was the infinity stone. Now, Diaz is the one I would have liked to keep. But I was very good with moving on from Alonso. I was amazed that somebody took Brandon Nimmo's contract. That was incredible. And I'm thrilled that Jeff McNeil is gone. Diaz is the one that stings a little bit. But again, he clearly didn't want to be here. He didn't come back to the Mets after the Dodgers gave him an offer. So we'll see you later. Now, Diaz will be the one that I miss. But otherwise, we'll not miss the other 3. And I know that hurts. You might say, oh, Jake, you're not a Real Met fan. I'm a fan of a winner. You know, 2024 was a magical year. But outside of that, this team didn't do crap. They won nothing. In 7 years, they made the playoffs twice. Just take 2024 out because we know there was Candelita magic and JD Martinez magic sprinkled into that team, and that was just a special team. The only team that made the playoffs was 2022, and they, lost down to the division because they played terrible down the stretch, and they lost in the wild card round. You know, they got their butts kicked they got their ass kicked in both games 1 and 3. So, if you just take 2024 out, this was a miserable run for this group of guys. Miserable. And I don't want to hear like Jeff McNeil was a big part of 2024. I don't want to hear Pete Alonso outside of the Milwaukee homer was a big part of 2024. Like, the Mets demolished the core. David Stearns demolished the core. And that is not an easy thing to do with a fan base that is now very, there's a portion of this fan base, a big portion of it, who is pissed at Stearns. They're calling him Stingy Stearns. I'm going to hear it in the comments below. But this was the final piece if you actually wanted to move on, and they got rid of him. Hopefully for him, he does well with the Athletics. I want to say Oakland A's, but they don't have a city name. It's just the A's. They're going to play a few games in Vegas, but the stadium's not ready yet. I think it's 2028. So they'll still play in Sacramento. But that's a good spot for him. Good weather. He goes home. He could golf, and he could rot away into irrelevancy. It's a happy day and a Merry Christmas and a happy holidays for all Met fans, because they don't have to deal with all the temper tantrums he threw. And now you got people saying, now Lindor's happy. He can be captain. Listen, Francisco Lindor's not the problem, guys. I don't know how many times I got to tell it to you. And it begs of other issues that people have with what the Mets are doing that I won't get into, but you know what it is. When they get rid of Jeff McNeil, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo. That's not an issue. The issue is the Mets sucked. And they're doing what they can to get better. And I understand they have moves to make. And we're going to talk about those, what could be next. Now, there's a lot of names still out there. And I know we're impatient because they've done a lot of getting rid of guys and not a lot of adding big players. But there are still a boatload of names out there. Baseball offseason doesn't end on Christmas, guys. You know, Pete Alonso last year signed in February. He signed on my birthday, February 5th. Speaking of, happy birthday to my mother. Today's her 70th birthday. Shout out to Mom. Happy birthday. But it feels like a birthday for all Met fans today. Really, yesterday, when the news happened in the afternoon. I read that, and I will frame that on my wall, that Jeff Passan tweet of Jeff McNeil traded to the A's. And, right after that, we start to hear, what do the Mets do next? And Yandy Diaz is a name I've mentioned on here all year. And I'm sick of saying his name, but I'm going to say it again because The Athletic and Will Salmon, who's very, like we talked about yesterday, and we've been talking about Will Salmon. We're having a Will Salmon love fest. We gotta have Will Salmon on this show. He's probably too busy breaking news, but Will follows me, so I'm gonna shoot Will Salmon a DM and see if he'll come on because he's just been incredible. He'll probably decline, but if he says yes, we'll be very happy to have Will Salmon on the program. We also, guys, some news. Sorry to get to his side. Hank Azaria will be coming on our show. Hank Azaria has watched this show. I saw him in Delta Club in August or September. I said, hey, Hank, good to see you. We interviewed you a few years ago with the New York Post when I hosted Amazing But True. He said, oh, yeah, your show came up. I watched your show. Good job. So Hank Azaria wants to come on. Hank Azaria will be on in the new year. So we'll keep you posted what date that's going to be happening. But sometime in January, we'll have the creator of The Simpsons, diehard Mets fan, the creator of Brockmire, an icon, Hank Azaria, on the program. And I'm going to work on having – now that we've passed 3,000, we're going to have some really good – now, we've had great guests. I'm not saying we haven't. Like, Wardy's great. Figgy's great. But we've had a lot of the same kind of people. We want to mix it up with some celebrity fans and people of those ilk. So Hank Azaria will be on. Yandy Diaz, I hope, will be on the Mets. And, that Will Salmon report talked about the Mets are looking for a right-handed bat, and they are looking for someone that could also play first base. I give you Yandy Diaz. And listen, I understand Yandy Diaz is not great defensively. But is Jorge Polanco, who had his press conference on Monday and talked about, he was working on first base in Seattle last year, and they kind of prepared him for a potential move to first. Well, right now, Jorge Polanco is the everyday Mets first baseman. They don't have another first baseman on the roster. Everyone mentioned Mark Vientos. Vientos, I think, gets traded, and even if he's not, I have no comfort. I'd rather play Jorge Polanco 162 games at first than play Mark Vientos 10 games at first, because you'll lose those 10 games. Mark Vientos sucks defensively. He cannot play first. So they're going to add a first baseman. Believe me, it's going to happen. And this report says they're looking for a right-hand hitter that can play first. Listen, the Rays have got to be open for business. So they traded Brandon Lowe. Yandy Diaz is an expiring contract, young team, still in that minor league park. Yandy Diaz, I got to imagine his value is pretty high considering he had an incredible season offensively in 2025. Mets got to get it done. If it's Vientos, Wenninger, do it. Let's see what it takes. I probably wouldn't do like a Spro or a Tong. But anyone outside of Jet, Sproat, Tong, I think should be for the taking for the Rays. And I understand he's 34, but this is the right-handed bat professional that you want. It's short term. It's not long term. It's 1 to 2 years. Maybe he ends up being DH next year if you don't feel comfortable with his defense, but he has that vesting option based on plate appearances. So Yandy Diaz is the perfect fit for this lineup to hit behind Juan Soto. Really is. Puts the ball in play, does not strike out a lot. Yandy Diaz struck out just 92 times 2025, 95 times in 2024, just 94 times the year before that, 60 strikeouts the year before that. Want to talk about former batting champions? The year after Jeff McNeil won the batting title, Yandy Diaz won it for the AL in 2023, where he hit 330 with a 410 on base. Think about the Mets potentially having guys, if he could get back to that guy when he was 31, just a few years ago. Could the Mets have 2 400 on-base guys hit back-to-back? And that's what makes David Stearns and a fan, what should make you salivate, is the potential to have 2 guys that get on base at a 40% clip hitting behind each other in the Mets lineup. That makes Pete Alonso look like poop. Like, you're talking about 2 guys that get on base at 400 clip behind each other. Are you kidding me? Sign me up. Now, will he be? We'll see. But, he's coming off a year. He hit 300. He had a 366 on base. He had an 848 OPS, 29 doubles, 25 homers. That's 54 extra base hits for Yandy Diaz. I like him, man. I like him because if you don't feel comfortable at first, make him DH. Yandy Diaz has played 290 games in his career at third base. I know it's been a bit. He didn't play that in the last 2 years. 2023 was the last time he played third base. So those days are probably behind him. But in a pinch, if there's an injury, you can move Yandy to third, and he's played that position. So I'm fascinated to see if that's the guy they're talking about. We could talk about Okamoto, but Okamoto is a left-hand hitter. So we'll see. Excuse me, Okamoto is a right-hand hitter. So that's the other option as well. So do they want to sign? Now, my guess is Okamoto's price tag is fairly high. The Mets don't want to give him a 5-year deal. But Okamoto's the other righty. So Kazuma Okamoto and Yandy Diaz are my 2 favorites. They're righties. They play first. They can play third. There's flexibility. It's either free agency Okamoto or trade Yandy Diaz. Those are the guys. The other intriguing move that would take shuffling that Francis Romero put out there right after the Mets traded Jeff McNeil, which was kind of a bombshell. And I don't believe it, to be honest, because it doesn't really make sense. But, hey, David Stearns hasn't, has fooled us all in the moves he's making, is Ketel Marte. If you remember earlier in the offseason, Ketel Marte is a name I brought up a lot. I wanted the Mets to trade for Ketel Marte. I don't think his contract is bad. 5 years, $92 million. It's about $19 million a year. The guy is a really good hitter. He's a decent fielder, not a great fielder, but a decent fielder. We pretty much watched those out the window when the Mets traded for Marcus Semien in the Brandon Nimmo trade. But Ketel Marte made the All-Star team the last 2 years. 28 and 72 in just 126 games last year. 283, a 376 on base. The guy gets on base almost 100 points higher than its average. 36 and 95 in 2024 in 136 games. 25 and 82 the year before that. The guy has put together 3 of his best seasons of his 11-year career the last 3 years. So his WAR 4.4, 6.8, 4.9. I mean, that is better than Pete Alonso. That's a higher WAR than Pete Alonso. So Ketel Marte would make you forget about a lot of the demolition that's happened in this roster because he's better than all 3 of those guys. Now, Pete Alonso is better in terms of homers and RBIs, but in terms of overall player, Ketel Marte is better than Brandon Nimmo, and he's in another dimension from Jeff McNeil. So the question is where you play him. Now, Ketel Marte, earlier in his career, he played center field. He played a lot of games in center field. Those days seem to be behind him. He has mostly been a second baseman since then. But Ketel Marte has 174 games of experience in center field. Could the Mets say, we'll move you to center or we'll move you to left? Left seems more likely. And you're our left fielder, and we play bench in center. Could that be the Mets' plan? In terms of run prevention, that doesn't make a ton of sense. Or could the Mets trade Brett Beatty, play Ketel Marte at third, or move Semien over to third and play Marte at second? There's a lot of things you can do that defensively it's not going to make all the sense in the world, but offensively it does make all the sense in the world. So, listen, I think the Diamondbacks would love to trade Marte with what happened in July when he left the team a couple of days. It sat wrong with some people. He's got $92 million. Would the Mets eat the whole thing? Maybe the Diamondbacks got to throw the Mets like $10 million. But if you're a Met fan, how could you not want Ketel Marte that bad in this lineup? Versatile player, and you want to talk about right-handed bat, Ketel Marte is a switch hitter. The Mets would have Francisco Lindor, Ketel Marte, and Jorge Polanco, 3 switch hitters in this lineup. I'm a big switch hitter guy. That would be huge. I mean, you're talking about Francisco Lindor, elite hitter, Ketel Marte, elite hitter, and Jorge Polanco, a really good hitter. That's 3 switch hitters in your lineup. That's like heaven on earth if you're a Met fan. So Ketel Marte is very intriguing. What it would take, I've talked about it. I think Senga makes a lot of sense in Arizona as rejuvenate his career. You get that $15 million off the board. It almost matches up with Ketel's salary for 2026. He's making $16 million, and then the numbers go up after that. And then you got to throw in prospects. Ketel Marte is a great player. It's going to cost you maybe a Jet Williams, Brandon Sproat. Like, it might be Jet Williams, Kodai Senga, Mark Vientos, and Jacob Reimer. Or it might be, if they don't want Senga, it might be Brandon Sproat, Jet Williams, Jacob Reimer, and Acuna. But I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it makes sense, and you figure out the positions later. But I do think Yandy Diaz for now makes a little bit more sense. If the Mets go first baseman and then go get your outfielder. But Okamoto and Yandy Diaz at the top of my list. We'll read a few comments. This is a longer show today, so I'm not going to get to all the comments. But, guys, I want you to know, like, I know it seems ugly so far, but I'm like the Mets therapist here. I've talked people into reality. These were losing players. I know I've called them losers, and people have got mad at me. They are losing players. Jeff McNeil is a loser. He throws crybaby fits at my age, 34. Listen, I could cry. I'm just a regular person hosting a show. You're a Major League Baseball player making $16 million a year. You can't cry every time you ground out. And that negative energy. I mean, the fact Francisco Lindor, by the way, posted 2026 loading season, like, fired me up because he did it, like, minutes after the trade happened. Like, it was so clear that he was happy Jeff McNeil's gone. Like, the aura in the clubhouse now is already off the charts. You got rid of the guys who most of the team did not like. I know you all think it was all love and roses with Nimmo, Alonso, and McNeil. It was nothing but that. And the Athletic story talked about how, a Mets person said it was an utter shit show in that clubhouse. And this is what I've told you all year. No one believed me. They said, you don't know anything. And now every story comes out every week of what I told you all year long, that there were all the issues in the clubhouse. And each week it gets worse. And mind you, Pete Alonso's answer on foul territory was all I needed to hear about him and the 2025 Mets. He said the Mets lost because of one game in 2025. He also blamed the pitching and injuries for the Mets not making the playoffs. If that's not a loser mentality, guys, and if that's not an egomaniac mentality, which I've told you about him, I don't know what to tell you. Of course, yes, they missed the playoffs by one game, but you're gonna say the entire second half of losing and being the worst team in baseball in the second half didn't factor in. It was one loss. It was just one, guys. It was only one. This is a collective team effort. And then to throw now that you got your contract, the pitchers and the injuries on the bus, we all know the pitching was an issue in 2025. But how about your lack of clutch hitting at times? How about a stretch where you hit 190? How about a stretch where the lineup could not come through? How about the stretch where you scored 0 runs in the last day of the season? Was that on the pitching? So for him now that he's gone to throw the pitching and the injuries under the bus and say you missed the playoffs by one game, egomaniac loser mentality of the losing Mets in 2025. And let's get that losing stench out. We have demolished the core, and now it's a fresh start. And it's showtime now. Now is where David Stearns puts up or shuts up. And what he does to this roster now will define the David Stearns era. And I may be in the minority, but I have faith. I have faith with the money. They get rid of $10 million with McNeil. That brings them down to $285. If they get to a $325 number, that means they have $40 million to spend. If they shed Senga's contract, that's another $15 off the board. That gives them $50+ million to spend. There are players out there. There is money out there. And there are number one prospects out there. The Mets have a top 5 farm system in baseball. They have the richest owner in the sport. They have money. They have the stadium. If you're giving up, don't let the door hit you on the way out. I've gotten comments, people saying, lifelong Met fan, I'm done. When they win, I don't want to see you at the parade. I don't want to see you at the playoff games. I want to see your loser ass at home watching and realizing how stupid you were for leaving this team because a couple losing players left. That's what I want to I want you to realize that you were an idiot when the Mets do win. I don't want you to be there for them when they're at the top. So just remember that. Loser, losers, losers. Now it's time to win. Let's see what they do. We'll read a few of your comments before we close out the show, everybody. Appreciate your support getting us to over 3,000 subscribers. Keep on hitting that subscribe. Let's go. Like Derek Baines, where's the pitching? Stearns is a joke. Terrible. The offseason's not over on Christmas, guys. It's over in March. That's when the offseason ends. Miguel says enough with the bum Luis Robert already. Expensive one at that. Yeah, but he is a one-year rental. Luis Robert is not a long-term answer. He's a one-year rejuvenated guy. I don't love it, but he is a right-handed bat that maybe rejuvenates his career. And at the very least, he's going to play elite defense and steal you 35 bases. Peter says 5 at 75 for Okamoto. If the Mets can sign for 5 years or less, they should pounce. Yeah, I mean, Peter, I love that money-wise, but I don't think the Mets want to give Okamoto 5 years. I think if the Mets could get Okamoto for 2 and a third-year option or a 3-year deal for $15 million a year, it makes all the sense in the world. Put him at first. Polanco's your DH. Then you go get an outfielder. Bing, bang, boom. The offense is set. Mr. Automatic says 34-year-old Diaz, stupid move, another move to piss off the fans. Calling him a secondary lower-level player. Yandy Diaz is not a lower-level player. For the fans who clamor that Jeff McNeil was a batting champion, how about we talk about the fact that Yandy Diaz a year later was a batting champion? So calling Yandy Diaz as a lesser player, Yandy Diaz blows Jeff McNeil out of the water. Yandy Diaz blows Brandon Nimmo out of the water. So you could sniff at Yandy Diaz because of his age, but he is a short-term answer. That's what he is. I'm not calling Yandy Diaz the future of the Mets, but he's a 2026 piece of the Mets that is coming off the best years of his life, and I don't see any regression. Dr. Manhattan, congrats on 3K. Cheers and happy holidays. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas, everybody. Just do something, said Luis Roberts sucks. It would quickly turn into Mullins series booze. I think Luis Roberts far better than Cedric Mullins and Jose Siri, but I get it. If he gets off to a bad start, he'll get booed out of town because fans already didn't like the move in the first place. Albarelli says, give the kids a chance. Don't overspend. Yeah, I don't think they're going to spend more than the 320, 325 number. I know a lot of fans want them to reach $350 million. It ain't happening. That's a pipe dream. But I do think kids are going to get a chance. Like, at some point, Ryan Clifford's going to get a chance. At some point, Carson Benz is going to get a chance. I think Benz is going to be the first one to get a chance. But you're seeing the pitchers get a chance. I think if Sproat stays, he's part of the team. I think McLean is obviously a frontline starter already for this team. So more and more kids are getting the chance. Dice Clubs says 3K subs. Hooray. Hooray. Thank you, Dice Club. NFL 305 says McNeil dumped for a 17-year-old. Yeah, I mean, listen, guys. Again, I'll close on this, and we've got a little long today, so we're going to close on this. The Jeff McNeil trade was about the dumping of a player, a person, and a salary. It was not about the return. And I know I didn't mention anything about Yordan Rodriguez, but here's insight from our guy Joe DeMayo on him. Signed with the A's for $400,000 out of Cuba. His fastball is up to 96 miles per hour with some ride that he threw approximately 70% of the time in his first pro campaign. He's shown ability to spin a slider. He's raw, but he now enters the Mets pitching system in single A. Let me remind you, and I read this yesterday, whoever tweeted a good point by them. David Stearns once traded Adam Lind for a single A pitcher. That single A pitcher became Freddie Peralta. So before you say, who the hell is Yordan Rodriguez? In 4 years, Yordan Rodriguez could be the Mets ace for all we know, if it ends up being like Freddie Peralta. David Stearns is a good eye for baseball talent. Rodriguez only has 15 and third innings in rookie ball to a 2.93 ERA. He is 17 years old out of Cuba, but it's a raw talent that maybe one day becomes a star. What this was about was getting a living, breathing body that has some potential down the road and shedding $10 million and eating the rest. And the Mets were able to do that. And for that, we say Merry Christmas. We say happy birthday to Mom Brown. And we all hope you have a great day. We'll have a show tomorrow. I don't think we'll have a show on Christmas unless there's breaking news, but we'll bring you a Christmas Eve show. And we thank you so much for your support. Keep on smashing that thumbs up. Hit that subscribe to Mets Daily below. Share the channel with your family, your friends. And subscribe to my YouTube at Jake Brown Live and follow me at Jake Brown Live on all socials. Appreciate it. We're over 12K on X. We're over 4K on TikTok. We're almost at 7K on IG. We're looking to get to 500 on YouTube as we try and build the YouTube up. Thank you for your support. Let's go Mets, baby. The new era starts now. It starts today, December 23rd, 2025, the start of a new Mets era. The core has been demolished. And now it's time to build a winner. Let's do it. Merry Christmas, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow.